Hello, and good day to everyone joining us from all across the world. On behalf of the Academy, I'm Praveen Chopra, and it is indeed my privilege to welcome all of you to yet another episode of Conversations with the Academy. Today, the spotlight is on an aspect that continues to intrigue social scientists and psychologists all over the world, especially with the recent experiences accentuating the need for optimized healthcare in an increasingly interdependent world, driven by shared values and purpose between professionals across the spectrum of medicine's development, if we are to achieve our aspiration of improving patient community outcomes globally. Jill, I'm going to request you to move to the next slide, which...
Sure thing.
Thank you so much. Now, professional identification is a facet of social identification and is the sense of oneness that individuals have with the profession, comprising the individual's alignment of roles, responsibilities, values, morals, and ethical standards. It's an integration of the professional self with the personal self, which is bolstered by a sense of integrity and feelings of self-worth. And the complex journey to forming this professional identity and social purpose as a shared value, especially in the medicine's development arena, is garnering increasing attention in both professional and academic circles today. Moreover, as a critical attribute for greater engagement and for delivering improved patient and health outcomes globally. Now, Eastern philosophy has long nurtured this, with the striking example being ikigai. Ikigai is the Japanese concept meaning life's worth, or a reason for living. And Okinawa internalized this and offered ikigai as the confluence of what you love, do what you're good at, do what the world needs, and do what you're rewarded for. And this puts together the whole concept of what we believe is our life's worth and our purpose of living. And this gives us a reason to do what we do because we love doing it, we're good at it, what the world needs, and what are we rewarded for. Now, to help analyze and shape our concepts around this influence of purpose and professional identity on ourselves and on the patient communities around us, we are indeed fortunate to have a distinguished faculty sharing their perspectives with us today. But before we go there, before we launch the discussion, some roles or notes on the session today. We will follow our usual conversational pattern and the format. Interestingly, we have over 175 registrants today, and this is a global audience raring to go. And the audience could certainly challenge the faculty with questions. You will see a Q&A box at the bottom, and you could do this in real time, because this is the real intent of the conversation between us. Look out for the poll questions, and keep in mind that the session is being recorded to be made available for on-demand viewing on the Academy website whenever we need to. And now allow me the privilege of introducing Jill Donahue. Jill has made her life's mission to foster greater engagement among life sciences professionals and researchers with the aspiration of contributing meaningfully to better patient outcomes. Those of us, like myself, have had the opportunity and the good fortune to have interacted with Jill, immediately feel her palpable passion for inspiring life science professionals to strive for more purpose-driven, to cherish their work, and to invest of themselves in building competencies. As a consultant, speaker, and author, she shares solutions on enhancing professional skills and confidence to make a difference in the healthcare space. Jill has co-founded the nonprofit Aurora Project, and her company, Accelerate, helps life sciences professionals build teamwork, engagement, and communication skills, all with the unifying factor of purpose and championing patient care. So thank you, Jill. Thanks for being with us today and driving the critical deliberations, and more importantly, introducing our panelists. Over to you.
Thank you, Praveen. Thank you so much. And yes, I look forward to our panelists are going to share their stories a little later on. So I'll let them introduce themselves. And I actually brought some pictures to help explain why I'm here and what my intention is. So maybe I'll start with that. So I put this picture up here. It was sent to me by a friend in my hometown, and it immediately made me think of us in our industry. Now, I don't know if you guys see that or not, but what I saw was this. Do you see in the bottom corner there, that firefighter? He's all dressed up. He has all his tools and equipment, all the knowledge, all the science, all the know-how to go out there and impact the outcome of that fire. But it rather looks like he doesn't stand much of a chance, doesn't it? And that's what I thought, aha, it reminds me of us in life science companies. We have all the science, all the technology, all the know-how, everything we need to go out there and make and deliver medications that can change and save lives. But sometimes we feel like we're up against that, don't we? It's a challenge. And when I reflected back on my experience in the industry, I remember I came into the industry with a background in psychology. And what I noticed was the people all around me were brilliant in the life sciences. We had that muscle was strong, right? But I also noticed the other muscle that is essential to communicate that information, the behavioral sciences, how we engage and connect and communicate. I noticed that muscle was a little weaker. So I set upon myself as a bit of a bookworm to study this, and started doing research on it and presenting my research nationally and internationally, and did my master's in adult education with a focus on influencing healthcare behavior change. And then when I was 35, something happened that changed my path. And that was watching my father die as a result of a prescribing error. So being in the industry, all I could think of was, what if my dad's doctor's medical science liaison or rep, somebody had been better able to access him and engage him to know the right product for the right patient for the right time. And this is what I had been studying. I actually left the industry 2 years later so I could study this full time because I was so fascinated with it. And I was discovering things I was really excited about. I started interviewing thought leaders, considered world-class business thinkers like the Adam Grants and the Daniel Pinks and the Mel Robbins and Gretchen Rubins, Keith Ferrazzi, these types of people, to find out how their research could help us do a better job in our industry in helping patients. And then I started interviewing thought leaders inside our organizations as well. And I culled all this information into a couple of books to help us engage better, to do a better job at helping more patients faster. And I started sharing these ideas from global stages. And that often brought me in to help teams, smaller teams. And then they would say to me, Jill, after all this research and all those books, I don't want to read all that. Just if you could just give me the nut of it, what does it come down to? What is the missing piece of the puzzle? And that's what I want to share with you today. That when we take everything else away about how can we do a better job at getting medicines to people who need them, the missing piece of the puzzle is an authentic patient focus. Another word there is connecting with your purpose, being purpose-driven beyond what's on the company website, but in your heart and hands. And that is a little more challenging than just putting it on a website. If I could put this in images, because pictures say 1,000 words, what we do when we're purpose-driven is we move from feeling like this little girl to feeling a little bit more like this one. As well, the people that we're engaging with, the people that we need to partner with and work with, they move from looking at us like this when we walk in the room to looking at us a little bit more like this when we walk into the room. Don't we all want a little bit more of what she's got going on there? So your work in medicine's development is incredibly important to all of us because we all are patients or caregivers or will be at one point. And we want to help you love your work and be even better at it. I want you to go home to your families happier at the end of the day, or into the kitchen if you're still working at home. So for our time together today, I want to share with you, why should you care about being purpose-driven? What's in it for you? And how do you connect with your purpose? And then we're going to turn it over to some wonderful people we have online here, Kevin, William, and Wilma and Andrew, and have them share their stories and ask them some questions about how connecting with their purpose has changed things for them. And then I'll come back after that and share your first step to connecting with your purpose and how will you know you're successful in connecting with your purpose with a little story and a final short, cute video at the end. Okay, So Praveen is going to monitor the chat box. So I really encourage you, even though we're all over the world and different time zones, et cetera, but please use the chat box to interact with me and with the panelists to ask questions. Praveen will be your voice. So please, and I'll be asking you some questions. So if you could go to the Q&A for any questions you have, or chat if you want to ask something off a sideline there. I want to start with sharing with you the great news on our journey to connecting with our purpose, our professional identity. The great news is that when we do connect to our purpose, everyone wins. It is unequivocally the best thing that is good for healthcare. It's good for you. It's good for your organization. It's good for the healthcare professionals. And of course, it's good for patients and caregivers. And I know that you're evidence-based. So I want to share with you some evidence. It's not enough for me to just sing kumbaya and tell you that that's all good. I want to give you some evidence on this. In the limited time today, I just chose a couple of my favorite things to share. First, I want to share that this is good for you to put the effort. So good for you for being here today. You had a sense that this might be something important to your happiness and how well you can do your job and how many patients you can ultimately serve. And you are right. There has been an explosion of research on purpose in the last decade. Let me just share with you an example from Daniel Pink. And I don't know, maybe some of you know him. Give a thumbs up or a yes in the chat box to Praveen if you have read one of his books or watched his TED Talk. And if you haven't, maybe jot that down. It's exceptionally good. But he's considered to be one of the top 10 business thinkers of the world. And one of the things he did was summarize 50 years of research on what motivates us in the workplace. And he identified 3 keys to exceptional performance. So if you could, in the chat box, please just type in there, what do you think those keys are to exceptional performance? What do exceptional performers have? What do you think? What's coming in there, Praveen?
Well, people are still mulling over the whole gravity of the situation.
Okay.
and you probably have also heard that Daniel Pink also he deliberated on exactly the global thinking about Ikigai. He also brought in the whole concept around do what you love, do what you're good at. And so it's a phenomenal way of thinking, like we all do, across cultures, across
yes.
So,
Western, Eastern, etc. Exactly.
And we have things pouring in, right?
Oh,
from exactly what we are talking about, of passion, making a difference, sharing, feel useful, autonomy, motivation, valued. And these are exactly the words that drive home why we are here today and why we are here at all. And a couple other words have also come in, Jill. It's sharing.
Beautiful.
And generosity. One of them also brought, Mariana said, good sleep, which is perfect because you sleep better if you believe what you're doing. So nicely done. So
Ariana Huffington has made a whole, yes. Okay. I love what's coming in there. That's amazing. Good. And they're all excellent ideas. What Daniel came to for the 3 keys were one that I heard you say already, autonomy, having the autonomy to do what you need to do, having the mastery to do it well. That makes sense, right? And then, of course, feeling your purpose, connecting with your purpose were the 3 keys. Energy Project, Harvard Business Review, they studied 20,000 employees across 25 industries on how they feel and perform at work. The presence or lack of what do you think? I'll say shout it out, but quickly type it. I think you're going to know what the answer is here. I'm not trying to trick you. The presence or lack of what had the highest single impact? What do you think it was? Anyone putting it in there? Did they get it?
Yeah, purpose.
Excellent. The presence or lack of purpose had the highest single impact indeed. National Geographic, some of you might have read this powerful book, Blue Zones, Lessons from Those Who Live the Longest. And they said one of the keys, knowing your purpose, actually contribute to more years of extra life expectancy. And this is not an insignificant amount. It was 7 years. Amazing, right? So, if there was a drug in development that did all these things, don't you think you'd take it? Yeah, I'll sign up for that clinical trial, right? Who doesn't want all these beautiful outcomes? And it can be yours when you take the time to focus on developing your purpose and your professional identity. And if all of that isn't enough, I thought this study was cute. I found a study that actually said that those who are purpose-driven are more attractive. So if all the other things are enough, maybe that'll get you. But, and here's the big but, What percent of people do you think are not connected to their purpose? Kit, you can put that up on a poll and people can vote on that. What do you think, guys? What percent of people are not connected to their purpose? If you can quickly choose 25%, 50%, or 90%. And then Kit, do you count us down? Oh, there we go.
I just got the poll started.
There you go. Poll is started. So go ahead and make your choice there. What do you think it is?
And while they're doing it, Jill and the panelists and Kevin, Andrew, and Wilma, you also realize a couple of other thoughts have also come in. There's a big thing around what people have commented, Pradeep, etc. What we have dedication. We need curiosity.
Yeah.
The last one is also very important. Someone brought up here, and says Anna, who says that look, it gives us the ability to think of the big picture.
Yes.
It's something that we need to bring in, so that vision, dedication, curiosity, balancing with purpose is exactly what we need today. So wonderful thoughts already creeping in.
Got a good group on here. That's excellent. Okay, Kit, can you tell us what the, does it count us down or? Yeah, you're right. Okay, you guys are insightful. Absolutely. What percent of people are not connected to their purpose? It's close to 90%. And you might say, oh gosh, that's, why is that? And I want to go to you specifically before we get into why is that, but what about you? To what degree do you feel connected to your purpose every day, your professional identity, the difference that you make in the world? And Kit, can you put that poll up for them? Wow. So not surprisingly, the people that are interested in this, you guys are better than average here, with 38% of you feeling often, 15% of you feeling connected every day. So good for you, because you're the ones that know that you need to fuel this. And that's why you came today, to fuel that, because it's not something you can just leave alone, but rather something you work on, feeling connected to your purpose. And this is what happens for those of you who are lower on this scale. Sometimes I think what I've noticed, and I just love the people in our industry, what I've noticed is that everyone got into this with the idea that, gosh, I really like the idea that I can use my special skills to help people in the end. But sometimes over the days, weeks, years, the to-do list, sometimes that focus on the patient and helping change lives gets replaced with a focus on the data, or for people inside the industry on the commercial side with a focus on the script, or for all of us with a focus on just the to-do list, getting through the pile, right? Does that resonate? Yeah. Sometimes that gets overwhelming. And then add to it, gosh, the last 2 years, I don't know how many of you read Adam Grant's piece on the word that we're all feeling, that blah, is called languishing. What a great word. But yeah, we've been struggling the last 2 years with that languishing. It's tough. We need to refuel that purpose, that feeling of passion for what we do. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we've made is not helping our people figure out their purpose, their professional identity. What does being purpose-driven mean to me? And how do I show others this intention? How do I live it every day? Sometimes to find meaning in our work, we have to change how we think about it. For example, is it possible, question for you, is it possible for a doctor to view her work as just a job, while the person cleaning a medical office sees her work as a career, and the administrator in a medical office sees her work as purposeful? Is that possible? Put in the chat box, yes or no. What do you think? Can that happen? Do you know people like this? I just met another one last week. Our waiter at the yoga retreat was so purpose-driven. So what are they saying, Praveen? Yes or no are they putting in there?
Anonymous, yes. And there's even a more superlative, absolutely.
Absolutely.
But, there's also thoughts coming around, and Asha, for instance, put in a word that you need to take ownership, and ownership is something that brings in the value that, so you have seen various thoughts and objectives coming around, and both psychologists and social scientists see this is the real value to being able to do what you do and believe in what you do. So thank you.
Exactly. The waiter at the yoga retreat last week was so purpose-driven. He saw his job. It wasn't just about getting food to the table. It was about connecting with people and making them smile. And he had the biggest smile on his face every day. Sometimes you need to look at things from a different perspective. right? Look at the bigger picture of what you're doing. It reminds me of the famous story of JFK approaching the janitor during a 1960s NASA visit when everyone was focused on getting a man to the moon. And he approached the man and said, "And what do you do, sir?" And the man stood up tall and proud and shook his hand and said, "Mr. President, I'm helping to put a man on the moon." He was connected to the fact that if he didn't pick up that banana peel, Neil Armstrong might have slipped and history wouldn't have been made, right? So what is your piece? Can you connect your banana peel to changing people's lives? And in fact, Simon Sinek, if you haven't watched his TED Talk, another good one I suggest you watch, but he made very, very famous in 2009, something that had been in the literature for decades. And that is that the best communicators, the most engaged and engaging people do one thing very different from everyone else. And that is they start with why. Most people do the opposite. For example, let me share with you a medical science liaison. We all know these people who are on the road supporting the healthcare professionals out there. Would you agree that this might be a typical way that a medical science liaison may introduce herself? Basically starting with the what, maybe a little bit of the how, but no why. So does that look like pretty typical? Usually I see a lot of nods here. But this particular medical science liaison said during the Power of Purpose workshop, she said, "Oh my gosh, now I get it. I see my why." She said, "When I was a little girl," she said, "I know why I'm here." She said, "When I was a little girl, my mom dropped me off at the front of the hospital. My job was to run lunch up to my dad, who was a doctor on the 3rd floor. I jumped on the elevator, but there in front of me, a patient had a code blue. I'll never forget it. The smells, the sounds, the noise." She said, "It freaked me out. Now, I wanted to use my science and I wanted to help people, just like my parents taught me, but I didn't want to be hands-on. So I went to the bench. But once I was there, I got lonely. And then I discovered this amazing job called medical science liaison, where I got to take that science and make it tangible to help doctors treat their patients better. I love my job." So you can see her why in purple, her how in green, and her what in red. So which MSL, Praveen, I'll just ask you, which MSL do you think goes home happier at the end of the day? The one on the left or the right?
It's obvious, right?
Thank you. Which one do you think the doctors want to meet with? Which one do you think the peers want to work with?
There you go.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the one on the right, the one on the right, the one connected to their why. So I want to ask you in the audience, what is your why? Why are you here? And what usually comes up first, and maybe this happened to you, is you immediately picture your family. Well, my why is my family. Everything I do is for my family. Well, yes, of course. However, I want to push you further because that is an outcome. We can feed our family, send our kids to college, look after our elderly parents, working anywhere. But why are you here? In medicine's development, in medical affairs for some of you. Why are you here? What was it about your background, about your experience that made this you living your purpose? Why did you choose medical affairs or medicine's development in the first place? What makes you proud about your work? Ultimately, you hope your work helps who? Where does your desire to help come from? Why is that meaningful to you? And you may be sensing, oh gosh, these are things I don't usually talk about at work. And indeed, that's true. Vulnerability ahead. However, staying vulnerable is a risk we have to take if we want to experience connection. And gosh, if there's one thing we all need right now, it is that connection. Connection to our own purpose and connection to each other and our common purpose. Everyone around this webinar are connected in our desire to help improve lives. And on that note, it is my sincere privilege, and I thank so much Kevin, Wilma, and Andrew for coming to share their stories. I'm so excited for them to share their stories with you. They have already gone through this thinking that you're just embarking on to think about why am I here? How do I help people? And finally, what am I? My title. So Kevin, I'll put up your slides, and if you could, please tell us a little bit about you and why you're here.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about my purpose. As a young boy in the 1960s and 70s, I watched my father in awe as he cared for patients. When he began medical practice in 1952, he was the third African-American physician in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I grew up, and he was loved by his patients. He understood the needs of his patients, and because of that, he didn't believe in appointments, and he saw his patients on a first come, first served basis. Patients began lining up at 4 a.m. in the morning to see him.
Wow.
They would create their own waiting list. And so by the time that he arrived at 8 a.m., there were often 70 to 80 people on the list.
Wow.
Between office visits and hospital rounds and house calls. He often didn't stop seeing patients until he fell into bed at 10 o'clock at night.
My goodness.
He was selfless, in his care for his patients. And I think that's why I learned about patient centricity before it was even a term.
Yeah.
And, and so then seeing my father's example, I kind of always expected that I too would be a physician. In fact, it really was a family thing. When I was graduating from high school in 1978, my older sister was graduating from medical school. My father had always had this vision and talked about me taking over his practice when I became a physician. But I knew that was a path I couldn't follow. At the time, I was struggling with coming out of the closet, and I knew that I needed to get away from Baton Rouge and to go someplace where I felt I could deal with issues around my sexual orientation more openly.
Yeah.
And so that decision took me to Los Angeles and the UCLA School of Medicine. That was followed by an internal medicine residency, a health services research fellowship, and a plan to embark on a career in academic medicine. But this was 1991, and we were at the beginning of an exploding epidemic. And so driven by a desire to take care of my community, I left my academic career and I began working in private medical practice, caring for people living with HIV and AIDS, where I really had an abundant energy and passion, not just to apply the science that I had learned in medical school and residency, but also to embrace the opportunity for human connection that I had learned from my father. I helped people deal with the most difficult time in their lives, and make that transition from fighting to live to accepting the inevitability of death.
Right.
And it truly felt profound.
Yeah.
And then thankfully medicine advanced. Patients went from dying to thriving. And so then I was searching for my next way to make a difference. And, along that journey, a detour that took me to law school eventually led me to a position in Pfizer as a field-based medical colleague, working in HIV, back in my passion. But I'll have to tell you, I was unsure about joining the dark side. But I quickly went from skepticism to pride as I advanced various roles in the company, embracing the importance of the work that we do and the value that we bring to patients. And so now as the chief medical officer for the Pfizer Internal Medicine Organization at Pfizer, I love that I help people living with some of the world's most common primary care diseases, affecting millions of patients globally. And I do that by leading a team of over 700 medical professionals around the world. We urgently and intentionally create the essential two-way communication between people living with these diseases and the people who are working to discover and share the breakthrough science that will change their lives. I truly, truly love my job, fulfilling Pfizer's purpose of delivering breakthroughs that change patients' lives, and feel proud that I am living my purpose, serving patients each and every day.
Wow. Yay to Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kevin. And I'll encourage participants to go to the Q&A and put your questions in. We'll have time for questions. And Praveen, you can let me know.
In fact, we do. In fact, first, right off the bat, Kevin, really important words move from dying to thriving. And also the whole, I would take a little umbrage because having grown up in Pfizer, the dark side always brings about, we brought sunlight into the way. So thank you. And there's the relationship, but Anna, and you could see it in the chat box, also brought up a point that I think you were alluding to. Her statement here is that, I can help thousands of patients
Yeah.
instead of the 10 per day I used to while practicing. Now,
Exactly.
both sides have the value, but it changed our palette, and our landscape moved from being able to influence a few in their lives, but to be able to influence a much larger community. As we said, we live in an interdependent world. So what you brought up has already evoked a lot of inspiring thoughts across. Thank you, Kevin. This has been most humbling. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And as Kevin's speaking, here's a person who is completely connected to his purpose and his professional identity. And you even admitted in there, Kevin, that at a time you weren't so sure. Going over to Pfizer, you sort of lost that professional identity. Like, who am I? What am I doing? What is my value? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's very true.
Yeah. And then it took some work and some thinking to get back to, and some experience. So for those in the audience who are feeling, I don't know right now, I think that's really encouraging.
Yeah, I think that I was connected to the purpose in the sense that getting back to HIV, where I had a tremendous amount of passion, made sense to me, but I wasn't sure about joining the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
And that was what I had to connect with and come into touch with and understand how that part of the journey could really amplify my purpose.
Yeah.
And another thought that's come up here, Kevin, and just to bring us back to the sense of professional identity, we've said these are shared values across the whole medicine's development continuum that we've seen from bench to bedside. And I think that what you are bringing in here is that focus on, we need to find ourselves in that continuum and being able to deliver on that purpose. So it's seeking identity, seeking self-worth, and this is like a leitmotif that keeps coming up. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for people in the audience, if there's anyone there saying, yeah, but I don't really touch the patient, anyone in this area eventually impacts the patient, whatever your role is. I say from, receptionist at the front office up to the CEO office, everywhere in between, in the labs, all over, we have a role in that patient outcome. And that leads to our professional identity. Wilma, can I ask for you to share a little bit of your story? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jill. And thank you, to the Academy for giving me the opportunity to share my purpose with you all today. And good morning as well, for me, at least. Good evening and good afternoon. So the other day, my 7-year-old's teacher pulled me aside to tell me a story. Apparently, she knew there was a family in her class that worked at Pfizer at the time. And so when she got around to asking him what his parents did, he said, my dad is a neuroscientist and my mom helped make the COVID vaccine. So this surprised us because we had never actually told him about my specific contribution to the project. I mean, my role was very small and very early on in the process, almost insignificant, but it really felt much bigger seeing it through his eyes, And that moment got me thinking about the significance of my work. So when I participated in the Power of Purpose workshop with Jill, it all kind of fell into place. When I think about why I'm here, feeling super fortunate and excited to be in this field, developing medicines, I look back to why the position is such a great fit. You see, growing up, I wanted to be a doctor, and that desire came from witnessing my family experience medical challenges during my childhood. I felt really compelled to help. You see, my mother had a tough path. She tragically lost my oldest sister when she was only 7 years old. And my younger brother was born with mental retardation and autism. So I always felt like I was, the lucky one. And because of that, I was determined to pay it forward. I got so much satisfaction helping my family that I wanted a career where I could help others. So after completing my Bachelor's of Science in Neuroscience, I prepared to apply to medical school. However, while studying for the MCATs, I had the opportunity to volunteer at a hospital. And that's when I realized that being a doctor wasn't quite how I imagined it. I learned that the job involved a lot of insurance issues, paperwork, stress, and anxiety. It was really an environment that I knew I was not going to be able to thrive in. And so for the first time, I began to reconsider my career path. And at the same time, I started working at J&J as an in vivo pharmacologist. Now in that role, I got my first taste of what it was like to develop a medicine. And I thought that was very exciting. And that's when I realized that I didn't need to go to medical school to help people. I was already in the career where I was making a difference. And so I decided to stay in this industry and, develop my career there. Now in my role at Travere, I help develop drugs that are safe and effective. My role is to find animal models that are clinically relevant, bringing in the right data so patients will feel confident joining a clinical trial. And a great day for me is when I feel like the work I did will help bring greater hope and promise to a patient. I'm a parent myself. I think if you can go to a couple slides, that'd be great, Jill. And I know that when a child is living with rare disease, parents often feel hopeless. My children have viral-induced asthma, and as you can see, they both have been hospitalized, but we have a treatment plan for them. And I just can't imagine how terrifying it would be to learn that there were no treatment options. And really, that's what drives my work at Travere. I want to help these parents, these families find answers for their children. And I do that as a principal scientist at Travere.
Wow. Now there's a person who is connected to her purpose and her professional identity, who you are and what you're doing. Wow, it's beautiful how you are supporting those families. And Praveen, I'll if there's anything that's coming in there, I'll let you
I guess people are still overcoming the
Yes.
emotion of what you've just phrased there. How do you put a smile on families? And I think it means a lot. And people are reacting to this. The question always, how do we translate that into our own lives? And you can see it filtering in some shape or form. Where do we pick it up? How do we share this? And how do we go forward? Again, the shared purpose and shared value and a shared belief in our professional identity. Thank you.
Yeah. How has it been for you since sharing this story, Wilma? Has it reinforced it in your own sort of get out of the to-do list? And
I mean, you kind of talked about it at the beginning of this, right? At some point in my career, I got really lost in the data. That's kind of, I would always say, oh, that's what motivated me was the data. And then coming back, going through the workshop with you, it was like, no, that's not actually why I started doing this. And, it was a big motivator and it's a good reminder.
Yeah, good. Yeah, fueling the flame.
Just to Wilma, your story has also evoked feelings, and Nora comes out strongly. Transforming what happens to us into opportunities for others is to understand our mission in life.
Yes.
Very well put, Nora. Thank you.
Beautiful, Nora. Exactly. Thank you. Andrew, last but certainly not least, can you tell us a little bit about you and why you're here?
Absolutely, Jill. Tough act to follow with these two, with Wilma and Kevin, but it's so empowering because when I think about my purpose and passion, I see folks like Wilma and Kevin, and it's so nice to know that we're all in this together. We do have those that are working together with a sense of purpose and passion. For me, I think I was blessed to be connected to my passion and purpose for taking care of patients at a very young age, and probably 9-10 years old. I remember in a very random way sitting in the backseat of my mom's car, running errands with her, and coming across a physician desk reference that she used as a reference book as she worked in medical records as a coder at a large hospital in Fort Worth, Texas. And I remember thumbing through the physician desk reference and not really reading some of the things. Maybe some of it I understood, but a lot of it I didn't. But I realized that it was just a book of medicines, and seeing the pictures of the capsules and the tablets, it was just fascinating that these molecules, these agents, can be given to patients and help them feel better or change their quality of life, or in many cases cure them. And I realized right then that I wanted to be a part of that. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, is there something I could do with all this information? And she said, sure, you can be a pharmacist. And that's when I knew that's what I wanted to do, was be a pharmacist and take care of patients. Fast forward 14 years later, I graduated at the University of Texas in Austin from the College of Pharmacy as a pharmacist, and was ready to take on the world and make an impact. Interestingly, my journey had just begun, and I didn't really understand my purpose really until I started in my clinical practice and came across two patients. I call them my bookend patients, because the first one was one that I had when in the very first month as a bone marrow transplant pharmacist at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas, Texas. And then the last patient was literally my last patient that I rounded on as a clinician just prior to going into pharmaceutical industry. Taylor, my very first patient on service, was just a beautiful little 4-year-old girl that had acute myelogenous leukemia, aggressive form of AML, and I remember over the time learning to know Taylor and her family, and I felt a real connection with Taylor because I too at the time had a 4-year-old daughter, and so I felt this real connection for Taylor on the floor. And I'll never forget the day after Thanksgiving. I walked on the floor, and I remember looking at the whiteboard and at the patient list, and I noticed that Taylor's name wasn't on the board anymore. And I was a little confused, looked around and saw the nurse, and I said, "Where's Taylor? And has she been transferred or what happened?" And sadly, they looked at me sadly. And one of the nurses said, "Andrew, I'm so, it's just horrible. You know, Taylor had become septic earlier in the afternoon and went to complications that night, and they did the best that they could for her." And I remember at that time, it was just the gravity of what happened, the fragility of life really fell on me. And I realized that everything that I did do something for Taylor, just like the nurses and physicians on the floor as well. And it seemed like it's like it happened just yesterday. It was that impactful to me. And then I go to Mary. Mary was my last patient that I rounded on the bone marrow transplant unit, and she was just one of those people that was full of life and was just so energetic and so optimistic about her therapy and how she was going to beat again AML. And I remember the very first time I met her, it was like talking to her about chemo, and the first 30 minutes of meeting her, I felt like by the time I left the room, I felt like I knew her forever. She was almost like a best friend for me, and so she was that much just energy. And so over the course of the therapy, almost 2 weeks of therapy prior to her stem cell transplant, I remember I thought, I felt compelled or convicted to tell Mary that I was going to be there for the rest of the time. And so after the interdisciplinary team left on rounds, I stuck around and I said, "Hey, Mary, I just feel compelled to let you know that I'm not going to be here tomorrow for your stem cell transplant. In fact, I won't be here for the rest of your treatment, unfortunately, but you're in good hands. The clinical team's going to do a fantastic job following you and helping you get better." And she said, "Well, why so?" And I said, "Well, I've actually taken another position within pharmaceutical industry in the research and development." It's a much easier way to say that instead of trying to explain what a medical science liaison does. And she said, "Andrew, I'm so proud of you. That's fantastic." And she said, "Do you think you can manage a hug?" And I said, "Absolutely, Mary." And I gave her a hug, fully gowned and masked. And then as I started walking away towards the door, I heard Mary say, "Andrew." And I turned around and I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "I hope you cure leukemia." And I said, "Oh, okay, Mary." And then I turned back around, walking towards the door. And I don't know if it was the look on my face when she told me that, or just the gravity of the request itself. But she said, "Andrew." And again, I turned back and I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Honey, you don't have to cure leukemia. Just be a part of something big." And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I can do that." And so that's what I do every day. I think of people like Taylor, and think of Mary, and I think of how, these patients are woven into the fabric of my soul, of what I do every day. Not only when I see Paige, my daughter, a 4-year-old now, she's 25 years old. Taylor would have been 25 this past year. And when I see accomplishment from Paige, when I talk to her every day and I see her do the things that she does, graduate from high school, graduate from Texas A&M. You can go to the next slide maybe and see my family. Yeah. So Paige graduated from Texas A&M. And again, I've got 2 older boys as well, or younger boys as well. And when I talk to her every day and I see her accomplish these things and be a collegiate volleyball player and get her first job and get her first promotion just last week, I think of Taylor because I think of what it could have been. And I realize the things that we do every day for patients mean something. And understanding the how precious time is. But also from Mary's standpoint, making good, waking up and working at the different companies I've worked for the past years in medical affairs, and not only as a medical science liaison, but also now as a leader for medical science liaisons. I continue to look at my day every single day, trying to make good on that promise that I made to Mary of being a part of something big. And that's who I am. That's what I do, and that's the why.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Who wants to work with Andrew on Andrew's team? Can I join? Yeah. All of our speakers here. Who wants to work with these people, right? And that's a great example of what happens when people connect to their purpose. You want to work with them, you want to collaborate. Andrew, what has it been like for you sharing your story with people?
You know, it's funny, Jill, because I feel like it's always been part of me, as you can tell, with how emotional and how passionate I get about just telling the story. But I've never shared as much as I have over the past several months, and it's been so impactful. In fact, it's gone beyond just the team that I work with of trying to make sure they have that connection. Because you're right, when you get up every day and you travel and you go see physicians and you study the data and you understand the treatment landscapes, and you do get lost, and if you don't remember why you're doing the things you do, you can begin to just kind of just do the things without understanding what the purpose is.
Yeah.
And I feel like being part of a research development company, just like Wilma and Kevin, and bringing medicines that will change patients' lives and help battle this horrible, for me, hematologic malignancies like leukemia and lymphoma. You are part of something big. And I've even really actually transferred it over to my kids as well. I mean, they're again in high school, finishing high school. Paige is out of school now, but I talked to them about what is it that drives you? Yeah. What is the why behind what you do? And I really wish I would have understood that from a lot earlier, younger age, rather than having the clinical experience. Even though it's been 20 years since that experience,
right,
it's really been a big part of my life, and it's been just absolutely fabulous to be able to share.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure it's great for the people hearing it. Kevin, you had a powerful experience when you decided to share that fireside chat. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, similar to Andrew, I feel like I've always been connected to my purpose, but I don't think until I met Jill that I was ever as intentional about sharing my purpose as I became. And so when I moved into my current role as the Chief Medical Officer for Internal Medicine, I wanted to introduce myself to my new group. And so I worked with one of my LT members to facilitate the fireside chat, where I had an opportunity to really talk about my purpose. And I shared it in great detail, much as I have shared it today, and talked a lot about the things that you often don't hear leaders talk about. Growing up, Black and gay in Louisiana in the 1960s and 70s. And I think allowing myself to be that vulnerable, it was an amazing experience for me. And it ended up being, I think, a really amazing experience for the organization. I got so many notes afterwards from colleagues who I hadn't met yet, thanking me and saying how much they appreciated my vulnerability, and how me talking about being openly gay gave them license to be able to do that, in their work environments. And, these are people not necessarily based in the US. I mean, they may be in Europe or in Japan. And it was just a really tremendous experience to see how sharing my story actually gave people the license to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to think about their own story and their
Absolutely.
Purpose and professional identity.
Yeah.
Praveen, if there are any questions, just interrupt.
No, I guess as people are just letting it sink
Absolutely.
in. This has been
Absolutely.
helpful to be able to share, and Kevin already touched upon the right point about how it's not just a Western or a US based, it's really global. And then we cross barriers, we cross cultures, we cross geographies, and that's really what brings us all together. I'm also mindful of the time. This conversation is so engaging, and we've got to see how we are able to bring this. So thanks for bringing it all together, Jill.
Absolutely. Yes. And in our last 10 minutes, I'll just ask the panelists, when you connected with your purpose, what happened? Was it A, increased trust collaboration, B, increased connection engagement, C, increased pride and joy, D, decreased silos finger pointing, E, decreased languishing, and F, better outcomes for all, or G, all of the above? I guess that might be sort of an obvious one, but.
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident.
Yeah, it is. But I mentioned that Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned that just before I began to tell my story, Jill, is that I feel a connection with Kevin and Wilma already, because when we all find that common purpose of changing patient lives and doing the things we do and being part of something big, there is a connection immediately, and we are in this together.
Yeah. Everyone around the table here, around this global webinar today, we're all connected through this, doing something big, however small our piece is, all of us together. That's a bright, beautiful fire that we're creating to help people. Yeah, we're all connected. I will close with a couple of stories. And you know you're successful when, obviously, these three people are a great example of living their purpose and having great outcomes as a result of it. I want to share another story with you. You can think of it as when a child in your life feels proud when they tell their friends at school about what you do, you'll know you're successful. And I share the story of Kelty Stewart. She is a rep here in Canada. And she went through this program. About a year later, she wrote to me and said, I think you'll like this story, Jill. And she explained that she was at the cottage with her two very active boys, Rory and Mac. Here they are, 6 and 8 years old. She said it was a rainy day and she had to keep these busy boys busy, or these active boys busy. And so she pulled out the paper and crayons and said, okay, it's art class. Draw a picture of what mommy and daddy do for a living. She thought off the top of her head. And then she sent me a picture of the refrigerator at the cottage. And I'm just going to zoom into it. Here's the picture of what daddy does. Anyone want to guess? What does daddy do? Pretty obvious.
Flies around the world, right?
He's an airplane pilot. Yes, that's right. Daddy's a pilot. But mommy is a pharmaceutical sales rep. What is Rory going to draw for her? People have said, reps have said, I don't know, maybe carrying a tray of sandwiches, carrying their bag, or at their computer, attached to their computer. But check out what Rory drew. I just love this. Look at the doctor looking at mommy with a smile on his face. They look like they're in partnership, don't they? In partnership to help that patient on the bed. Mommy was talking at home so much about going to work to help doctors, help patients. This is how he articulated it. So I challenge you to think, what would a child in your life draw for what you do? Is it about helping people save and improve lives? You see, not everyone communicates like this. Only the ones who have the greatest success, I would say, are the ones who can connect with their purpose, their professional identity. And it brings this new mindset that creates those new results at work and at home, I dare say. I love thinking about the families, the children that people go home to feeling more rewarded and happy at the end of the day. And to close, before I pass it over to Praveen, I want to share with you this 2-minute clip. And I think you'll see why I chose this, but it's just a moment in a comedian's stage show where he stopped and chatted with someone in the audience. And turn up your volume and just enjoy this 2-minute clip before we close out.
What would he do for a living, Daryl?
I work at Oak Ridge Military Academy. I'm the music director there.
Musical director at Oak Ridge Musical Academy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. But you got a deep voice, man. I would not want to get you mad. Jonathan, come here. You're like, oh, snap. 9 Jonathans show up. It's amazing, dude. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Let me hear. We didn't plan this, just so y'all know. We didn't plan this at all. I'm just randomly talking. Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved
see. Now, that's what I'm saying. Oh, goodness gracious.
Woo!
Well, what do you do for a
Now,
living?
that is the power of purpose, is it not? What a beautiful example. And I'll challenge you to ask yourself, which version of Amazing Grace will you sing tomorrow? What is your why? And how will you continue to develop your professional identity through your purpose? Believe me, I don't expect that this is something that you will have right now. It is indeed a journey. But creating our professional identity starts with you connecting to your why. So giving you some food for thought, things to think about. And thank you for taking the time out of your day and the energy to think about something so foundationally important to you, doing the best work you can, serving the most patients possible, and going home the happiest you. And with that, I will turn it back over to Praveen.
Wow, thank you. And before I move and try to close this, I think this is no way we can close this kind of inspirational session, which everyone's bringing across. But Adam, who's sitting in Shanghai, by the way, late in the evening there, brings up a very important question for the panelists. Now, I'm not sure we have the time today to be able to address this, but I will take this back to the panelists. So Adam is asking, please, can each of the panel members share one of their most challenging moments in their professional careers, and how did they overcome it? A very strong question. Now, while we will not be able to go through that today, but I would leave that with a wonderful thought for the next time that we all—
Great conversation in the future, yeah.
Indeed. So
Absolutely.
just to bring this together, I'm not sure how I can follow this act here, because it's been such a humbling experience, and the expressions across the board have unanimously extended the passions, the belief, and the dedication in their journey for self-worth. This conversation, as you rightly alluded to, Jill, opens the door for many more platforms to encourage and champion this dialogue, which we owe it to ourselves and to the community around us. And it also offers hope for fostering that critical attitude we talked about of self-worth, purpose, and professional identity in a more structured delivery and format. That's where we need to take that up as an, as an action item. It only remains for me to now thank the panelists for transforming what is apparent vulnerability to a strength and to inspiration. Thank you so much. It also behooves me to thank the operations team for providing just the perfect platform and the thoroughly engaged audience bringing their voices into the conversation. Mm-hmm. So have a wonderful rest of the day, even as you go about making a difference in all that you do.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
everyone.
Praveen. Thank you.
Thank you.